This is continuing coverage. The Black Swan murder trial of Ashley Benefield from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. Now back to the courtroom.
And you said that the wound was front to back. Was it, and from how you showed, you said it was essentially horizontal?
Yes.
It wasn't front to back like it went straight through. Can you describe it?
Certainly. I mean, it went through an angled path through the body, and that angle took it from the front toward the back, but at a greater angle from right to left.
Thank you. And you said that it struck his ribs and his lungs and his vertebral
body.
Thank you.
The spine.
His spine.
Yes.
And would that injury have been immediately fatal?
Probably not.
And would it have incapacitated, if you can say, incapacitated Mr. Benefield quickly?
I think it would have incapacitated him quickly. Whether or not it was immediate, I don't think one can predict.
Thank you, sir. I'm now going to take you to the arm wound. Was this wound different from the wound we saw in Mr. Benefield's chest?
Yes.
And how so? And this, for the record, states 91.
Yes. What one can maybe not clearly appreciate just from viewing the photo, but was clearly evident at the time of examination, is that this is only a surface wound. So what you see as the mark on the skin here is the full extent of this injury. So it's an abrasion or a scrape on the skin, but outside of the effect on the skin, nothing deeper was involved with this injury.
Thank you, sir. And then finally you said he was also shot in the leg. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I'm going to show you states 92. Can you orient the jury as to what we're looking at on Mr. Benefield's body?
Yes, and this is a little bit of a tough one orientation-wise, but the injury is to the back of his leg. So what we're seeing here is the back of the leg, and it's the calf area here. This is a perforation of that calf. I think that's the best way to describe it, the calf area.
And the chest wound we saw entered and did not exit. Was this wound the same or was it different?
It was different.
And how so?
Because this injury did indeed have an exit.
And where did you locate the exit?
The exit was on the right side of the knee.
And Dr. Vega, how can you, and I have a picture of that, but before we move on to that, how can you tell the difference between an entrance and an exit wound?
It's not always possible, but typically entrance wounds have more of a well-defined defect in the skin. Frequently that defect in the skin is paralleled by defect in the tissues that one can appreciate underneath. Many times the edge of the skin perforation or the edge of the skin defect will have a ring or at least an arc of abrasion or scraping as the bullet passes through. Exit wounds tend to not have those features. One way that I like to think about this is it's like a very fast-moving awl or punch, in that it goes in and it almost drills a hole into the skin, but when it exits, what it does is it tenses up the skin until the skin tears. That's how a bullet exits. So typically, the tear doesn't have the same well-defined drilled appearance that the entrance wound rather does. And in this case, that's exactly what we see.
And I'll show you 93, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is the exit wound associated with the entrance we just saw.
That's correct.
And I have a close-up. This is states 94. And so can you kind of show the jury how you knew this was an exit wound?
Yes. So this injury does not appear to be a round or drilled type of defect, but rather a tear in the skin that occurred when the skin was stretched until its break point by the bullet trying to exit.
And were you able to determine the wound path for this injury?
Yes.
And what was it?
So the wound path started at the back of the leg and went through the musculature of the calf. And then I couldn't tell for certain if the path actually went through the bones or if it passed right next to the bones, but because of blast effect, injured them, causing fracture. The amount of tissue damage can make that part difficult to separate out, and that was the case here. After doing that and fracturing the very top part of the leg bones, tibia, fibula, it then exited through this exit defect on the lower right side of the knee.
And I hate to ask you, but would you mind stepping down and showing us on your leg where this entered and where it exited?
Certainly.
Thank you. You're more comfortable. You can. Easier. Yes, sir.
Hard to see.
Mr. Taylor, if you need to reposition so you can see, please feel free to do so.
So on me, the entrance was here.
If it'd help, I can put my finger there.
Okay. And the exit here.
So here to here.
Yes.
And so that's, you said slightly up or up?
It's upward from the right toward the left and from back to front. Yes, largely all three of those components.
Thank you. Well, you know what, Dr. Vega, while you're down here, just for clarification, would you show me again the chest wound? Just because I think you're easier to see now that I've made you get off the stand.
Entrance. Lodged bullet.
Would you just spin one time? Just turn so they can see. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Vega. I appreciate that.
Mr. Taylor, were you able to see both of those demonstrations?
Yes, Judge White, thank you.
Dr. Vega, was there any physical evidence associated with this injury that was recovered from Mr. Benefield's body?
From the leg injury? Yes, there was.
And I'm going to show you state 15. You'll take a look at that. Tell me if you recognize it.
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize it?
This is the lead fragment which was recovered from Mr. Benefield's leg just deep to the exit defect.
And how does this differ from the projectile? Like you're saying fragment. What does that mean compared to the projectile?
Well, as we've already discussed, we have an entrance and an exit here. So essentially, the projectile exited the body. Before it did, a small piece of it broke off and remained in the tissues. This is that piece, and that's what I recovered at the autopsy.
Thanks, sir. And other than having been repackaged for trial purposes, it appear to be in the same, essentially the same condition as when we removed it from Mr. Benefield's body.
It does.
Your Honor, the state would ask to enter State 15.
Proceed.
And Dr. Vega, I have a photo of States, this is States 97. Is that the same item that is in States 15?
Yes.
Did you find any, I'm going to go back to the, well, Dr. Vega, what is stippling?
Stippling is a term we use to describe certain changes that occur in association with gunshot injuries. It refers to the pattern on the skin or any other target of unburned gunpowder fragments that strike that target and create a pattern.
And did you find any stippling associated with the gunshot wound to Mr. Benefield's leg?
I did not.
Did you find any with a wound associated with his chest?
I did not.
And what, if anything, does the absence of stippling tell you? Specifically, we'll talk about the leg first.
The absence it reflects the same principle in either injury, and what it means is that typically when the weapon was discharged, it was far enough away so that the unburned gunpowder fragments, which are ejected with the bullet, had a chance to lose velocity and fall away prior to striking the skin. In general, typically that means that the muzzle of the weapon was more than 3 feet away from the target or the skin in this case, but any more precise determinations require the test firing of a weapon, same weapon or same style of weapon with the same ammunition to try and get more specific information.
And for the chest wound, if he were wearing a shirt when he was shot, would that affect what you would find on the body?
Yes.
That was why I was asking separately. And so to be clear, you said the muzzle, so would that mean that if it's not necessarily the body of the shooter, but if they had their arm extended or even here into the gun from it?
That's right.
And I know you determined a path of travel and we're still talking about the leg injury, for this leg injury, but does it tell you this path of travel anything about where the shooter would have been standing?
All it really tells me is the relative position of the weapon to the leg at the time that the weapon was fired. And trying to come up with the relative position of the shooter at the time that the weapon was discharged is much more complicated because both the shooter and the victim, and specifically the victim's leg, can be in multiple different positions and still end up with that required relative position of the gun to the leg and still create this same injury.
And, Your Honor, may I have just one moment? Yes. Dr. Vega, if hypothetically Mr. Benefield were falling, would it make sense that his legs would flip up in the air enough for this path of travel? Does that make sense?
If this injury were sustained while he was falling,
yes,
then the injury would be sustained while his body is changing its position and in motion. But regardless, at the time the weapon was fired, the muzzle of the weapon would still have to be, relatively speaking, below, to the left of, and behind the right leg in order to get this particular angle of path of travel through the leg.
Thank you. And can you tell, when you conduct an autopsy, and specifically in Mr. Benefield's, which of these wounds occurred in what order?
I cannot.
And once you completed your autopsy, did you order toxicology testing?
Yes.
And was that done in this case?
It was.
And was there any drugs or alcohol found in Mr. Benefield's body?
No, there were not.
And finally, based on everything that you did during your autopsy, did you determine the cause of death?
I did.
And what was that?
I determined the cause of death to be a gunshot wound to the chest that caused perforation of the lung, or the lungs, both lungs, with hemothoraces. It's a fancy word for bleeding that occurs in the chest.
And I didn't ask you this, but I guess, could you explain, so once this bullet entered Mr. Benefield and started to travel through his lung, what would have been happening inside his body, or what would happen right after?
The primary things that happen there are that very rapid bleeding starts to occur. The bleeding is rapid because the lungs are very vascular, and so when they're damaged, they bleed very quickly. And also there's no impediment to the bleeding. The cavity around the lung can expand very rapidly to accommodate bleeding, so the bleeding that happens as a result of a gunshot wound to the lung is very rapid. In addition to the bleeding, when the lung gets a hole in it, it no longer holds its shape and its anatomical arrangements, and it collapses to some extent. That collapse is made worse by the accumulating blood pressing on the lung as well. So the combination of physiological effects of bleeding and lung collapse are the primary things that are occurring in the body at the time that, or immediately following the bullet passing through the lung.
Thank you. And did you determine the manner of death in this case?
I did.
And what was that?
I determined the manner of death to be homicide.
Your Honor, may I have just one moment? I don't have anything else, Dr. Vega. Thank you. The defense may.
Mr. Taylor Cross, and of course the question is, do you need this?
Afternoon, Dr. Vega.
Good afternoon.
I've seen you for a while. How's that facility that you're in?
Very nice, thank you.
Just a few questions, if I may. I think told us that the deceased was 169 pounds and stood 5 feet 9 inches tall.
Correct, yes.
Muscular.
I don't think I used that terminology. I think I just talked about the weight and the body length.
I want to ask you mentioned about hollow points. The public perception about hollow points is that they are more lethal. The fact is it not true? The hollow point's designed to expand when it goes through tissue?
Yes, that's right.
Theory being it's to stop a bullet from exiting and harming someone else.
That's certainly part of the philosophy or utility of having a hollow point projectile.
And when you tell us that the wound was probably not fatal, within a reasonable degree of medical science, and I think you made it pretty clear, you really can't say one way or another that upon being shot like that, he would drop immediately, that he may have continued for a couple of seconds.
Yes, that's right.
The stippling issue about gunpowder, it's from a distance of approximately, you told us, 3 feet.
Roughly, yes.
Okay. So when you exceed more than 3 feet, you would not expect to find stippling.
That's correct.
And you didn't find any stippling on his shirt.
I didn't examine his shirt.
So if somebody were backing away while they were firing and they got beyond that 3-foot range, there may not be any stippling.
That's correct.
All right. You said that the wound to the scalp was indicative of, traditionally see it, of somebody falling backwards and hitting a hard surface like a tile floor.
Yes.
I want to ask you just a couple other questions. Are all homicides crimes?
I'll allow it if the witness has the knowledge to answer.
In my experience, homicide, as determined by a medical examiner, has a certain medical legal significance, which does not necessarily imply criminality.
Okay. In simple language, it could be excusable,
I'll sustain.
justifiable. I think if it's within his knowledge, Your Honor.
No, I'm going to sustain because that's asked for a legal conclusion as opposed to a medical.
All right. You mentioned, Dr. Vega, that you could not determine the order of the shots.
That's correct.
Okay. There is no medical method of being able to say which shot came first, which shot came second.
In certain cases, the physiological findings may help you with that, but in this case, no.
Would it be a fair statement for me to say that for the chest shot, the weapon would have had to have been pointing at his chest from the front?
Yes.
Let me just check, Your Honor. I think that might
Yes, sir.
conclude. Last question with respect to the leg. You've told us that the gun would have had to have been lower than the leg to get that upward trajectory.
Yes, although I would say that, lower is a relative term,
Yeah.
and legs can be put into various different positions, and if we're going to say lower, then it needs to be clear that lower means with respect to the leg in an upright position, and if the leg were horizontal, for example, then we might be talking about a position which is above the leg, but pointing up towards the head of the body, for example.
Okay, so let's try to be clear here. If Mr. Benefield fell backwards and his legs went up in the air, might that injury be consistent with that?
Given that scenario, it's possible.
I believe that's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you, Dr.
State any redirect?
Dr. Vega, I don't want it to be unclear. The gun would have, for the chest wound, the gun would have had to have been in front of Mr. Benefield's body. That's what you said.
Yes.
But it didn't enter his chest. It entered the front of him. It entered through the side.
Yes, so the weapon did have to be in front of him, but even more so it had to be to his right side.
And based on your training and experience, is it typical that if somebody were to fall backwards, that their legs would go above their heads when falling?
Without the intervention of something to fall over, an ottoman, a chair, or something like that, it seems unlikely.
And if Mr. Benefield were running or his legs were up in the back, could the angle have also been accomplished?
Yes.
Thank you, doctor. I don't have anything else.
That's all.
All right, can the witness be released?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Sir, you're released from your subpoena. You're free to go.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh, Judge, while we're switching, could the deputy pass 14 and 15? Would you mind?
Oh, pass, you mean
Yes.
to the jury?
Oh, sorry,
Wasn't
publish.
quite sure what you meant.
Sorry,
Publish.
I meant pass through the jury. Yes, sir.
All right. Members of the jury, as with yesterday, we're to pass these around. These will go back with you during your deliberations. All right, state your next witness.
Daniel Hausdorff.
Madam Clerk, sorry, can you swear to what you say in the mic? Thank you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, sir.
How you doing, Judge?
My name is Judge White. I'm presiding over this case. As the deputy said, just make yourself comfortable in that chair. Scoot up just a little bit. I'd like to have you about 12 to 15 inches away from that microphone. It does adjust up, down, left, right as you need. And if you just speak in a loud, clear voice, it should pick up everything.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you state your full name?
Hold on one second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. You all finish up. We're going to wait a second.
Yeah, I apologize, Judge.
I don't want anybody to feel rushed. But like I said, everything will go back with you all during the deliberations.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Friel.
Thank you, Judge. Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
My name is Daniel Hausdorff. Last name is spelled Hausdorff.
And how are you employed?
At the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, also known as FDLE.
And how long have you been with FDLE?
It'll be 11 years in September.
And what is your title and position?
I am a crime laboratory analyst in the firearms section.
And how long have you been in that position?
I have been in that position out of training since August of 2018.
And what are your official duties as a crime lab analyst in the firearms division?
My main duties include microscopic comparisons of fired ammunition components, such as cartridge cases and bullets. I also perform firearm function testing, which means I test fire the firearms as well as check the safeties. I perform distance determination, serial number restoration, and imaging cartridge cases into our database.
And when you say cartridge, well, we're going to get there, I'm sorry. What kind of training did you receive to become a firearms analyst?
I have a bachelor's degree in biomedical science from the University of South Florida. I was hired at FDLE in September of 2013 as a forensic technologist in the firearms section. That had 6 months of training, and I was in that position for about 3.5 years. I then was promoted to analyst and completed the 18-month training program to hold that position, and have been out of training since August of 2018.
Thank you. And do your daily duties include the analysis of firearms?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you previously testified as an expert in the field of firearm analysis?
Yes, I have.
Thank you. And can we just talk about ammunition first to kind of get the basics? What do you call a complete item of ammunition?
A cartridge.
And someone might refer to that as a bullet, but that an intact live round.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you use the word cartridge.
Yes, ma'am.
And what are the components of a cartridge?
A cartridge is comprised of 4 parts. There's the cartridge case, which is the body of the cartridge. There's also the primer, the gunpowder, and the bullet.
And the bullet might also be referred to as?
A projectile.
Thank you. And does your analysis also regularly involve the analysis of semi-automatic firearms?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you tell me what a semi-automatic firearm is?
A semi-automatic firearm is a handgun that is going to fire one shot every time you pull the trigger, and the gases from firing is automatically going to cycle the firearm, extracting and ejecting a cartridge case and automatically loading another cartridge.
And so the cartridge case leaves the firearm every time?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's opposed to a revolver, is that right?
That's correct.
And I want to draw your attention to FDLE case 311227, the case you're here about today. Did you have the opportunity to examine evidence submitted to your lab under that case number?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you receive evidence into your lab, what's the normal procedure?
The normal procedure is the agency will submit the evidence to our lab where it's given the unique FDLE case number, and then each item has a unique FDLE item number. It's given a case tracking form, which I receive from my supervisor when I'm assigned the case, and that has all the details of the case, and everything is tracked in our computer system called LIMS. It's the Laboratory Information Management System that just keeps all the information about the case and the evidence, where the custody of all the evidence is being held at that time, and things like that.
And when did you conduct your examination of the items in this case?
I started working this case on March 9th of 2021.
And I want to first show you states number 13. It's already in evidence. It's open. Would you take a look at that and tell me you recognize it as an item you received in your lab?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is it?
It's the Springfield Armory 45 auto pistol that I received.
And how do you know that it's the same firearm that you received in your lab?
It has the FDLE case number, item number, and my initials in my handwriting on both the pistol and the magazine.
Thank you, sir. And what type of analysis did you perform on this firearm?
So whenever I receive a firearm, I'm going to perform a function test on the firearm to make sure that it does fire, in fact, and also check the safeties on the firearm. In this case, there are 3 safeties on this firearm. There's a trigger safety, a grip safety, and a firing pin block. All are designed to make sure there's no accidental firing.
And was this firearm found to be in proper functioning order?
Yes, ma'am.
If Your Honor and the deputies don't mind, is it okay if he removes it just to display it to the jury so I can ask him some questions?
It's empty.
Oh, I was going to say, there's gloves here.
It's okay, sir.
Again, Mr. Taylor, if you need to reposition so you can see exactly what's going on, please feel free to do so.
Mr. Hausdorff?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you mind just standing up so the jury can see and telling us the parts of the gun that you just talked about?
Yes, ma'am. So this is the top portion of the firearm called the slide. There's the trigger, where the trigger safety is right in front of the trigger here. There's the grip safety in the back, which is depressed by normal operation of the firearm. There's the firing pin block, which is housed in the slide that is deactivated when the trigger is pulled. And the way that this firearm works is there's ammunition loaded in the detachable box magazine. It's inserted in the grip of the firearm. At that point, I would release the slide and load one round into the chamber of the firearm. I would pull the trigger, which is going to cause the firing pin to release, striking that primer on the cartridge, causing a spark to go through the flash hole, and ignite the gunpowder, which is going to cause those rapidly expanding gases to propel the bullet down and out of the firearm. But it's also going to cause the slide to move rearward. The fired cartridge case is going to extract and eject out the side. As the slide moves back, it's going to recock the firearm, and then it will go back forward again, pulling another cartridge from the magazine and into the chamber of the firearm, ready to fire again.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, Rob. Can we put it for a moment?
Of course.
Mr. Hausdorff, if we heard testimony that when this firearm was found, the slide was not totally seated, does that make sense to you? Am I saying the right words?
Are you basically saying that it wasn't in battery, that it wasn't all the way forward?
Yes, in battery, that's what.
Okay.
And that there was a live round still in the chamber.
I'll allow it to set up the scenario.
And that the deputy testified there was a live round that was still in the chamber.
Okay.
Is that something you're familiar with occurring in firearms?
It's a possibility. If the extractor is really tight, if the spring is very tight on that, it's possible that it would not go around the extracting groove on the cartridge. If that happens, it could get stuck back just slightly. I mean, a quick jar to the back of the firearm could knock it over that. But normal operation of the firearm, it should cycle properly. And since I test fired it 3 times, I didn't have that issue when I was firing.
And if it were not seated and that live round was not in a completely normal position, would that prevent the gun from firing?
Yes, ma'am. It won't fire when it's out of battery.
Thank you. I'm now going to show you states 4 through 7, which I believe are your items 3 through. You take a look at states 4 through 7 and tell me if you recognize them as items you previously examined. I messed up.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And how do you know these are items you previously examined?
They all are marked with the FDLE case number, item number, and my initials and my handwriting.
And what are these items?
These are the fire cartridge cases that I received in this case.
And what is the caliber of these casings?
They're 45 auto plus P, and the plus P just stands for higher ammunition pressure.
And what does that mean, higher ammunition pressure?
It means they're loaded to have higher velocity.
And velocity is the speed in which they travel?
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you know the caliber of these casings?
It's written on the head of the cartridge, which is right back here.
And is there a name for that end of the cartridge?
That's the head.
Thank you. And what type of examination or testing did you conduct on these cartridge cases in states 4 through 7?
So these cartridge cases, I performed an examination that I was trying to compare these cartridge cases to the test fires that I created from this firearm to determine if they were fired in this particular firearm.
And how do you accomplish that?
So when I test fire the firearm in our indoor laboratory range, I use laboratory ammunition that's similar to the evidence that I received in this case. So I test fired 3 Hornady rounds that were 45 auto, which is the same brand that I received in this case. After I get done test firing it, I take the cartridge cases and the fired bullets that I received back to my office where I compare them under a comparison microscope. It's 2 microscopes joined by an optical bridge that allows me to view 2 objects at the same time under the same magnification. So what I'll do is first look at my test to test, and I determine what's the repeating pattern that's coming from the firearm itself that's being transitioned to the cartridge cases and bullets during the firing process.
Can I stop you there just
Yes,
so we can
ma'am.
talk about that part?
Yes.
We're really going. And so you said you first look at test to test. And can you explain slowly
Yes,
how,
ma'am.
what you're looking for to compare those to see your test and what you're looking for to determine that?
I'm looking for the reproducible pattern that's coming from the firearm. So what happens is when the cartridge case is fired, or the cartridge is fired, the cartridge case will expand back and make impressions from inside the chamber of the firearm, as well as this end of the firearm, which is known as the breech face. And this is where the firing pin comes through and strikes the primer. All that pressure is going to push the cartridge case back against those areas, and all the microscopic imperfections within the firearm are being transferred to these cartridge cases during firing. The reason is the firearm is the harder object, the cartridge case is the softer object. The same thing is happening with the bullet. The bullet is going to expand, also known as obturating. It's going to seal all the gases in the barrel, and there's rifling inside the barrel, known as the lands and grooves. It's going to seal all those gases. The impressions are going to be transferred from the barrel to the bullet.
And when you looked at your test fires, you said there were 3?
Yes, ma'am.
Did they all have consistent patterns on them?
Yes, they do.
And so once you determine that they in fact received consistent patterns, what's the next step?
The next step is to take the one that has the best representation of that firearm. It's essentially, if you think about it, you're making like an ink stamp on the ground. It's the same stamp, but depending on the pressure, the angle, it's not going to look exactly the same. same. So I'll pick the one that has the best representation of everything from the firearm. And when I do that, I'll place one of those test fires on the right side of my scope, and I'll take one of the unknown cartridge cases on the left side of my scope. And when I look at them on the oculars, I overlay the images on top of one another, and I can see the patterns repeating between one another.
And once you compared your test fires to the cartridge cases in states 4 through 7, did you make a determination about their relationship to this firearm?
Yes, ma'am. All 4 of these were in fact fired in this firearm.
Thank you. I want to now show you states 8, 9, 10. And 14. Would you like to take a look at these items?
Yes. Thank you.
And tell me if there are items that you've previously seen in your lab.
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you know?
They all have my markings on the base of the bullet with the FDLE item number, case number, and my initials in my handwriting.
And how are these items different from the cartridge cases we just talked about?
These are the bullets that are fired from the firearm.
And are you able to determine the caliber of fired bullets?
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you do that?
So what I'll do is a couple different ways. I'll measure the base of the bullet as well as the weight, and if I have both of those, that'll already give me my answer like that. And in this case, all 4 of these projectiles were intact, so I was able to tell the caliber just based on that.
And what was the caliber you determined these bullets to be?
They're in .45 caliber class.
And that's the same caliber as the casings and the firearm, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what type, other than the weighing, the measurements, what type of examination or testing did you conduct on these projectiles or bullets?
So I did the same thing as the cartridge cases. I examined the test fires from this firearm to the bullets here, determining if they were or were not fired from this particular firearm.
And once you did that comparison, were you able to, did you determine?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sorry. I got distracted. And what was your finding?
That all 4 of these bullets were fired from this firearm.
Now, I think the first time you said fired in, and then you said fired from.
The reason I just say in is that cartridge cases are technically in the firearm, and I say from because the bullets leave.
And so there's really no difference other than it's technical?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Finally, I want to turn your attention to States 15, which is a fragment. If you take a look at that, tell me if it is something you previously examined.
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you know that is something you previously examined?
On this one here, it was too small for me to mark on the evidence itself, but on the container, I have the FDLE case number, item number, and my initials in my handwriting.
And were you able to conduct any analysis of that item?
On this one, my only analysis was that it was no value for microscopic comparison because it was too small and there was no individual characteristics or rifling seen.
So you can't make any determination. Could you make any determinations in comparison to the firearm or any of the other evidence?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Does your work at FDLE also involve the chemical analysis of some clothing or other items?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you kind of describe what that entails?
So what that entails is what we're trying to accomplish is if there was a max distance to the discharge of the firearm to
Most of the
in this case, I received 1 t-shirt, and what I will do is I will visually, microscopically, and chemically test the t-shirt to see if there's any presence of gunshot residue or any vaporous lead from the firing process. So what happens when a gun goes off is there's a cloud of smoke that comes out of the gun. That's the vaporous lead that's caused from the primer material. What that is it will create basically a sooting around the hole, and it's indicative of a close shot. There's also gunpowder particles that can get left behind on the t-shirt as well, and some of those you can't see visually or microscopically, so we have to do chemical comparisons. In this case, I didn't see anything visually or microscopically, and I also did chemical testing to test for those burned gunpowder particles as well as that vaporous lead, and I was able to determine anything.
You got ahead of me.
I'm sorry.
But it's okay. This is States 2. Is this an item
Yes.
you previously analyzed in your lab?
Yes, ma'am.
And I just want to slow you down a little bit and back up. So when you analyze this, you're looking for microscopic particles of
Gunpowder.
Gunpowder. Thank you. And when you examined this shirt, did you find any of that?
No, ma'am.
And did you make any other observations, that indicated to you that this shirt was involved in a shooting at all?
Just besides the hole, no, ma'am.
And what might explain the lack of gunshot powder on this shirt?
There's a multitude of reasons. Some of the common ones are going to be, it could be poor evidence handling. It could have maybe shaken off some of the gunpowder particles. It could be an intervening object. If there's something in between at the time of discharge, obviously those gunpowder particles or residues cannot make it to the actual t-shirt. It could be that there was either blood or debris that could have inhibited the chemical processing or masked any of the gunpowder residue that was on there. And then finally, it could be too far away to actually produce onto the shirt itself.
And what distance might you expect to find stippling on a shirt if those other factors were not involved?
It's various, but with a pistol of this nature, the gunpowder particles will typically fall off around 5 to 6 feet, and the vaporous lead will fall off around about 2 to 3 feet.
Thank you, sir. Judge, may I have just a moment? I don't have anything else to make, sir.
Thank you.
Cross.
Very briefly, so Mr. Hausdorff, your testimony here today is basically that The ammunition was fired from that gun in this case?
Yes, sir.
And you found no evidence of stippling or gunpowder residue?
That's correct.
And there's all kinds of reasons why that might be?
Yes, sir.
Thanks very much.
You're very welcome.
Redirect?
No, sir, thank you.
Can this witness be released?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes, sir.
Sir, you're releasing your subpoena, you're free to go.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
State.
Your Honor, at this time, the state rests.
All right.
Members of the jury, the state is rested, so there's a couple of legal things we need to speak about. So I'm actually perfect time for your afternoon break. I'm going to give you 15 minutes. So remember, please don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Please don't do any research on the people, places, things, or legal topics we've heard anything about. And don't speak with anybody else outside of the jury about this case at all. All right? Leave your notes. All right, you all can have a seat. All right, when I just sent them on an afternoon break, I could see some worried looks on your faces. It's not my intention to, do JOA and everything else and keep plowing through this afternoon. But I wanted to talk to you all about scheduling so I could give them an idea before I let them go for the day. I saw the looks. All right, so the state is rested. Obviously, we have a number of things we got to do. First and foremost, the JOA. I'm just surmising that it's going to be a lengthy JOA argument. So we got to get through that. Now, depending on what the ruling is on that, we also, if I do deny it, I want to talk with Ms. Benefield about my colloquy regarding testifying or not testifying. It won't be to get answers at this point. It'll just be the colloquy that I go through. I'm looking back through my notes. We've still got the issue of Vicky Mechanic, trial sub, and Richardson hearing. We've got the issue of Daubert and what's his name? Bliss, the expert. Ferris. I don't know where I got Bliss.
He's a police
You
officer.
smushed them together.
Okay. We've got that, and I have another Richardson issue. It just says 391 emails. Okay, Richardson emails. And then we also have the issue of Faith Brown. And she wasn't listed, but you want to call her to authenticate those emails, and I would assume put her own her own explanation for them,
Yeah.
which would be inconsistent with the testimony Ms. Murphy gave.
And there's one other matter.
Oh, all right.
In an effort to protect Ms. Benefield, because we've yet to deal with this, I issued another subpoena to the JA yesterday, so I've already heard from Ms. Floyd, who has filed, the court probably hasn't caught up with it yet. She's filed another motion to quash, but she's also filed for sanctions, so the court may want to deal with that.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll eventually just kind of wait and see if her presence is obviated by Ms. Brown's testimony. I don't want to make assumptions. So I was going to kind of give you all the options. If you want to, I can give you the break that I'm giving them. You all can talk about, do we want to do some more work tonight? How late do we want to stay? Do we want to get all the way through this? Would it be better that we took care of some of this in the morning? Because I don't know when when is Mr. Ferris going to be available?
I would anticipate when we decide to call them, they'll be available.
Okay. All right.
I think we could do the JA, Your Honor, and the other stuff. We could do the JA, and maybe if you want to do the discovery now. I certainly wouldn't mind breaking a little early. I would guess that would be fine with them also.
Can I stop you? When you say JA, I think judicial assistant.
JOA.
JOA. Okay. I just wanted to clarify.
Sorry.
Well, yes, I think let's at least get that done this evening.
Yeah, okay. That was gonna be, I was trying to figure out if he meant JOA or JA.
Yep, sorry.
So now-
that's the reason I break up.
So let me give you all a break. Absolutely. When the jury comes back, I'll let them know that we have some work to do on our part. We're not leaving early. We've got stuff to do, and then we can hit the ground running tomorrow morning. Just so you know, because it's in, as soon as I said tomorrow morning, it was in my head. We could still start at 9. I've opened to that, but I will have a hearing at 8:30 because I've got motion for release of uncharged defendant, a 33-day motion. I'll have to hear first thing if it hasn't been obviated by the filing of the information or a null pros. I don't know yet.
And that's scheduled for 8:30?
I set it for 8:30 tomorrow. I asked for it set for 8:30. So you all take your break, and then I'll see you back here in about 12 minutes.
Thank you. So,
Yes, sir.
it's never easy, Your Honor. We have a witness issue. Faith Brown is available now, but she's not available tomorrow. She will not be a long witness. I wonder if the court would entertain, however Your Honor wants to do it, while we have the jury here, I can call her. Or case law even says the Supreme Court case of State v. Smith, the court could call her as a court witness, and when she's done, then we could do the JOA, or we could do it in reverse.
I'm sorry, did you say she's here?
She may be outside now. She was on her way over.
I would at least like a few minutes to speak to her based on the fact that I didn't know about her.
Yeah, of course. I'd absolutely give you that option. So that may, and certainly based upon the case law, certain witnesses and facts and evidence are going to have to be presented before, not Bliss, Ferris.
I just don't know how you can accomplish that when the evidence that they're attempting to seek also, I think, was never provided to the state. That's the other subject of your
Yes, it
Richardson
is,
hearing,
actually.
is those emails from the sealed hearing that we've now had access to. I think had to have been obtained by the defense from Ms. Faith, whatever.
Faith Brown.
Faith Brown, and because the state's never gotten those until yesterday.
What was the date, September 30th of 20?
Now, Judge, those emails came from the state.
You're gonna have to show me where, because
I don't
I
know.
looked in my entire...
Well, hold on, we don't need the back and forth. I'm trying to figure out.
I don't.
Listen, this is for me, who typically is just, let's start the trial, let's go. Let's get this thing done, not delaying it for the jury any more than we have to. So this is really outside the box for me. With all of the things that need to be done, what do you think about we make tomorrow a work day? I let the jury go, and then we come back Monday and hit the ground running with the defense case in chief. Tomorrow's a work day for us.
I think that would be an outstanding idea, Judge.
My first one of the trial.
No, that really would work out pretty well, because I got witnesses like planes stacked, and my head is spinning over it. So, yeah, that would...
And just so you know, State, this is also what I'm contemplating is the fact that whether or not I find any kind of Richardson violation for the emails or whatever the other one was, I can't remember what the other one was, then you have the entire weekend to go through everything. And we kind of hit reset, and then defense, you can come forward with your obligations. If it's a witness you expect to call, a document, a tangible object you intend to use at a hearing or trial, specifically identifying it, and hopefully that'll obviate those issues. Again, it's a little bit different for me, but what do you think?
And Judge, I would be fine with that. My only concern is that I thought some of the alternates had conflicts next week, and I don't remember, and maybe it was actual seated jurors, I can't remember.
No,
There were started,
But I don't know
I'm
if
not
it
sure what they were.
started Monday or Wednesday or...
I think the juror that he had, the gentleman we had last today, he has a conference starting Monday out of town. Not that we would be done tomorrow.
Judge, I can only tell you that for my purposes, I believe I could have pretty much, even though I had some problems, I think if we hit the ground running Monday morning, I think I can move this thing pretty good.
Right, but does that mean finish Monday or finish Tuesday?
Oh,
Define
definitely
finish.
don't, definitely don't finish Monday.
All right, so defense case done Monday. And
Then
then
we
you,
close Tuesday?
And then
Would
you-
that be the,
I think that might be optimistic. I think Wednesday probably is more realistic.
okay. I'm just
right, so
saying.
finish defense case Monday, but then we have jury instructions.
Right.
Oh, can't. I apologize, sir.
That's okay.
So you expect to finish Tuesday?
I hope to finish Tuesday. I didn't mislead the court when I said I had a number of witnesses. I will do my best to end it on Tuesday, but it's going to be challenging.
Yes, I mean, you're correct in identifying that some of the jurors expressed that they had time restraints, but however, both sides chose to keep that.
Well, and I think what would Wednesday on the calendar be?
Next Wednesday is the 31st.
We still should be okay. I know for me, I had some scheduling issues at or around the 1st. So
Right.
we could try to finish the case up Tuesday, if not early Wednesday.
And Judge, I just think if we're talking about the defense not even being done on Tuesday, I don't want to take a whole day with nothing. I mean, but I recognize that I don't make the final decision, but that would be my opinion, is to not go a full day without doing any trial tomorrow, but.
All right. Do you have some witnesses, defense, that you could call tomorrow afternoon?
Yes.
All right. So what we could do is we could do some work this evening. Again, depending on what my ruling is on the JOA, we come back tomorrow morning. Oh, and I checked, the information was filed, so I do not have the hearing at 8:30. But we could start first thing tomorrow morning with these hearings that we need to get through. Go to lunch, and I tell the jury to be back here at like 1 o'clock, and then we start the defense's case in chief around 1. And go as far as we can. Okay?
Okay.
You're nodding your heads, but
Yes, sorry.
Okay. All right, so if you could, let's bring the jury back out. I'm going to release them for the evening and ask them to be back at the jury assembly room tomorrow about 12:45 with a goal of having them up here around 1 o'clock.
All right, so, I'm sorry, Judge. I'm wondering, where does that leave me with Faith Brown?
On Monday.
Well, if she's not available tomorrow,
She's not, is she available Monday? No, she's out.
I'd say maybe call her Monday.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I can
Mr.
do
Hill,
it.
she's not available
I just want to make sure she's available on Monday.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right, or is she under subpoena?
No.
Judge, I just feel like the state doesn't have the option to say our witnesses are not available. I mean, if they're traveling or the next morning or whatever, but to delay an entire day because they didn't make arrangements with their witness, who they haven't listed, seems outrageous.
No, hold on.
Okay.
This is me, because I want to get these, I got a bunch of hearings that I got to get done,
Okay.
including colloquy with the defendant. If Faith Brown isn't available tomorrow, then we can just call her Monday, and that'll give you a chance to get a deposition done. Did he step out to ask? What's he asking?
Want me to bring her in?
No, I just need to know, is that the plan?
Yeah.
So, because I want to let the jury go, tell them to be here tomorrow at 12:45.
He's out there asking her now. And if there's no chance that we could put her on today, then
No, I agree with the state. She hasn't even been listed, so I certainly will allow you to call her, because I understand the reason why you need her. But I think the state, again, hearkening back to that due process concept, they have a right to speak with her and take her deposition.
okay. Give me a moment.
Of course.
I'm happy to report, Your Honor, she will be available tomorrow at 9 o'clock. She's got a little window, so we're good.
All right.
So we're going to do all the motions this afternoon?
Yeah.
Thank you, Judge.
Yep. And hopefully she's available for you to speak with her. Do you want to step out and make those arrangements now?
I will, yeah.
But while you're doing
Yeah.
that, can one of you stay?
Yes, I'll
And I'm
stay.
going to tell the jury 12:45
Yeah, you can
tomorrow?
let 'em go.
Well, no, wait a minute.
Right, now we could have them here in the morning.
Now I need them here in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Hold on. I just want to make sure she's going to be available. Because you guys have every right and should be able to speak with her about her expected testimony. Did that come up during your conversations?
It might come up, but I'm sure she'll talk to them, Judge.
Go ahead.
Well, Your Honor, I feel like a vacation has been snatched away from me.
The what?
I feel like a vacation has been snatched away from me. I was picturing having tomorrow off. Jack, is she out there? Okay. Judge? It's never easy. We have a small complication. It's an issue that Your Honor's going to have to deal with. She was not under subpoena by either side, and was not told that because she wasn't expecting to be witness, that she could not observe the proceedings. So she has watched some of the proceedings. Once I contacted her, told her that we needed her, we've told her to stop, and of course she's conformed to that. I don't know if that presents an issue, but I want to disclose that to the court, and Ms. Brown wanted me to as well.
Okay. You don't have to say anything now. I'm just, you're on notice. We're just waiting for her, Miss O'Donnell, to come back in and confirm that we can get, you guys can speak with her tonight or tomorrow. Yeah, just, I need to know that answer so then I can decide, I can let the jury go. Because if you can't speak with her tonight, that'll be a whole other issue. Or depose her in the morning, one or the other. All right, Miss O'Donnell is back. Is she going to be available for you to speak with her this evening or tomorrow morning?
I spoke with her. We did not set up a time, but I think she will be available when I formulate when I need to speak with her again.
Okay, all right, great. So I'm going to tell the jury to be here tomorrow morning, 8:45, start at 9. Okay.
Sorry, Judge, I didn't realize you needed me to come back.
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Yes, bring him in. Y'all can have a seat. Welcome back, everybody. I know what you're thinking, that was longer than 15 minutes. But, okay, so there are some things that we need to do on our end. And the reason I gave you that break was to have a conversation with the attorneys and kind of make a list of everything that we need to do before we can move on to the next step. So what I'm going to do is we're going to stay this evening and keep working, but I'm going to let you all go for the. So remember, please don't discuss amongst yourselves anything about the case or begin deliberations. Don't talk with anybody outside of the jury about the case. And please don't do any research on people, places, things, or legal topics you've heard anything about. Tomorrow, if I could have you downstairs in the jury assembly room at 8:45, and we're going to have a goal to start up here about 9 o'clock. Figure if we stay late, and then some things tomorrow morning, we should be ready to get going then, okay?
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Just fold up your notes, leave them right there on your chair.
Right.
And we'll see you tomorrow.
More continuing coverage is on the way. The Black Swan murder trial of Ashley Benefield from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. Press subscribe now.